screen starts glowing, and the film starts rolling. You wanna be knowing what you might be in for. So give the show a listen and find out what you're missing. Put yourself in position for the easy good score.
Hey listeners, this is part 2 of our Lord of the Rings discussion. Check out part 1 where we gave an overview, then discussed Fellowship and the Two Towers. Okay, so bullet point 1 on Return of the King. This one opens with a flashback, as do all of them. In this case, the flashback is to two cousins who are fishing together. It's Smeagol and Deagol. So they find the one ring in the river. Deagle's actually the one who finds it, but Smeagol's like immediately enthralled by it, and he kills his cousin Deagle in this immediate obsession that he has with the ring. And then we kind of get like time lapse of Smeagol getting more and more Gollum-y as he gets more and more obsessed with the ring. He eats like a fish and gets grosser, and his eyes get bigger. And then we kind of meet up with the present where he is Gollum. And he is with Sam and Frodo, still tempted by it, and leading Sam and Frodo into his big trap for them.
Big fan of this sequence. It's really gross and scary. And we see these middle stage Golems where he's got a physical suit on, like a rubber monster suit. And you can see the difference between like, oh, we could have gone this route with the movie, but instead we made these milestone effects where he's totally CGI.
Yeah, he kind of has a glow up between like stages 3 and 4. Like, he looks terrible. Like it's like hideous, and then he goes to normal Gollum where he just looks like a emaciated baby or whatever.
Yeah, and there's this like switch flip moment where he closes his human eyes with contacts in them and then opens them to CGI eyes.
Yeah. A couple thoughts on this. So when I saw this in theaters, it did not clock for me that this was Gollum. And so this first sequence, I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? And then I realized, like, oh, it's Gollum the whole time. That was a good reveal for me when I was in theater. It's probably honestly my favorite part when I watched Return of the King in theaters. And then another thing is, I always thought this idea of Smeagol / Gollum talking in his weird way was like him having this like para relationship with the ring and like this alternate version of his personality. But then you see him in like the flashback, and he's already talking weird, and he's already using like the plural to refer to himself.
It's our birthday or whatever he says. Yeah, that's probably an oversight, I would say. I think you're right. It should have been more it would have worked better, a little bit better, if he became weirder in the way he talked. He didn't start out weird.
If he were less evil to begin with.
Yeah. He immediately, it's like less than 20 seconds between his cousin finding the ring and him deciding to kill him. It's like,
chill, dog.
Yeah.
Have a downfall.
It's like, how much did you like your cousin if it takes that short to decide to kill him?
Like, that's a pretty nifty ring. I'm going to murder you.
And I really like what they do with the sound design there, because you have like the heartbeat in the background, and you can hear it as like the music becomes more tense, and then it like slows down as Deagle dies.
Yes. That was
really
cool.
interesting.
All right, bullet point 2. So catching up with the humans, Fellowship that's not Sam and Frodo. So they've just won on behalf of Human Faction 2. So that's the Rohan. But now we haven't dealt with all the baggage related to Human Faction 1, Gondor. So that's the one where Aragorn is the Secret King. And they somehow determined that the orcs are... Oh, I remember how they do it. They figure out that the orcs are going to attack Gondor. And the way they do this is they get a vision from Saruman's crystal ball, which has some of that evil ring magic or like some associated magic with it that one of the hobbits touches, and he gets a little bit like ringified.
Yeah, it's like a signal check. Anybody who's got a Palantir can see through all the other Palantirs.
Yeah, and Sauron's very presence is basically implied to be extremely corrupting. So Perrin or Pippin rather. Perrin is a character from the Wheel of Time. Pippin is a character from the Lord of the
Pippin
Rings.
is short for Peregrine.
Yeah, Peregrine. So Pippin, they find the crystal ball that I guess was the one that made Saruman go insane in the water. And then he's like, oh, this is cool. And then later, after they get drunk and have a party, he's like, I'm just going to go look at it again. And then he looks at it again, and they kind of get really lucky. Because first of all, they see where Sauron is attacking. And then also, because he's a hobbit looking into the Palantir, it convinces Sauron that Pippin has the ring. Because he's like, oh, it's a hobbit. I'm seeing him. Oh, he's the guy with the ring. That's why they're like, he didn't say anything about Frodo, right? So he's like, no. They say he's a fool, but an honest fool.
And just closing the loop on the state of Gondor right now, what we're learning is it's run by a steward, like we talked about. And that steward is the dad of Ned Stark, Boromir, and then Faramir, who briefly captured Frodo in the second movie. And the thing about the steward...
Denethor is his name.
Okay. Is he's kind of a mirror, but like a not quite so bad mirror of the guy from the second movie, who's also like a king who's kind of corrupted and bad.
So we've got Theoden and Denethor.
Yeah.
And so, but this guy is not like magic cursed by Wormtongue or anything. He's just like a guy who's kind of corrupt and cowardly. And also, he really likes tomatoes. That's apparently a big Lord of the Rings meme.
Well, you saw the scene where he's like noshing on these cherry tomatoes and red stuff is dripping down his face. That's a really good scene.
Yeah, so two things I want to say. I guess let's talk the tomato scene. So it's complicated militarily because there's a lot of repeated beats in 2 and 3. But there's this setup in both movies where like there's this outer human town that gets taken over by the orcs. The orcs win these little battles, and it's like, oh, then you know that it's serious. So there's this human outpost called Osgiliath, and the orcs take Osgiliath, and Faramir reports back, says, "Hey, Dad, they got us at this outpost, but we can shore things up here in the main city." And Denethor is like, "No, the hell you won't. Get back to Osgiliath."
Denethor says, "I wish you died and your brother wasn't alive."
That's the response.
It's like, oh.
And so Faramir's got to go and on this suicide mission, basically, while Denethor is sitting in his hall, like, basking. He's got the Hobbit singing for him.
You get Billy Boyd, Pippin singing, and it's like a really, like, they intercut him singing this sort of somber song with Faramir's charge, and meanwhile Denethor is like feasting on like chicken legs and tomatoes and stuff like that. It's like it's almost disturbing. It's like the way it's cut is certainly very stirring at the very least.
Yeah, this was the first moment I can ever remember seeing a movie in a theater and thinking, this is going to win Best Picture.
Really?
Like this is the best movie of the year. The intercutting, the slow motion of the charging horses into the suicidal mission while he's eating the bloody tomatoes. It's like, I'm feeling things. This is the power of cinema.
And then you get the sound of the arrow, the bowstrings, as they all, you don't really see what happens. But anyway, we'll get to it with the recap.
All right, so bullet point 3. So I didn't quite follow all of it, but there's like some belly aching about the human factions actually working together. But like the symbolic gesture that they're willing to work together is that there's this big beacon torch that if it gets lit, it's like a declaration, like, I need your help. We need to work together. We need to protect each other. And Pippin sneaks in at Gandalf's orders and lights it. So it gets lit up. And then it's kind of like in the, I remember it distinctly from Mulan. Like they light a torch and then somebody nearby can see another torch and they light that.
And now
so
all
it's like
China
a chain
knows
of
you're
them.
here.
Exactly.
Yeah, this was the next moment where it's like, this is incredible because you got these like helicopter shots over the mountains of New Zealand as these beacons are lighting up.
I cannot watch the scene without being like, who's lighting these beacons? Are there just people
They're just
living on
chilling
the
there
top
for
of
like
these
centuries.
mountains? Yeah, it's like, who is
and they're
lighting?
like instantly right. Oh,
It-
there it is.
It's
yeah.
not like they check once an hour. It's like immediately it goes up in flames. And yeah, you get, so I think the whole belly aching is that Denethor is like, we're doomed. Nobody's going to come. I don't want to do anything. I just want to be nihilistic. Meanwhile, Theoden is like, Gondor didn't help us when we were fighting off at Helm's Deep. And the whole thing is in the second movie, it's not just Helm's Deep. Like previously they're being harried by Saruman's forces and also like raiders. So he's like, Gondor didn't come and help us when that was happening, so why should we help them then? And then he just decides, like, I guess we'll help them. The beacon's lit up. Gondor calls for aid. Let's go.
What I hadn't thought of until I watched it this time is, how do you know who lit the first beacon?
I guess the assumption is that it's either coming from the Gondor capital or I guess it doesn't matter, right? If it all gets lit up. Yeah, you're right, though.
It's like,
where
don't
do you
know
go?
who was the first.
Right.
Yeah.
If the only instruction is, as soon as you see a beacon, light your beacon, nobody's going to know where it started.
But if it's just two endpoints, like you kind of know you got to go left or you got to go right.
Yeah,
you got to go towards one or towards the other.
Think of it as a fire alarm. When a fire alarm goes off, you don't know where the fire is. You just know that there's a fire.
Yeah, get outside.
But
I want to say one thing. You said you go left or you go right. I want to talk about the limited geography of this world. Like, it's kind of set up that, it's this massive place. But really, like, the things that are labeled on the map, at least the biggest letters, are like, you start in the west with the hobbits and you just go east and you go through Rohan. That's the middle area. That's the part 2 area. And then Gondor is all the way
It's further east, yeah,
yeah.
and then southeast is Mordor.
Right. Okay. That's the big thing is Gondor. There's this discussion in the movie. Oh, where are they going to attack? Where is the assault from Mordor going to come? Oh, it's going to be Gondor. Gondor and Mordor are next to each other. They're like Germany and Poland.
Yeah, but I think Rohan, so it's like Gondor, and then below Gondor is Mordor, and then northwest of Mordor is Rohan. So I think in theory, Mordor could also attack Rohan if they went northwest instead of north. Because
all right, I see.
it's kind of a triangle situation.
Yeah, it's not really portrayed in the movie, but in the book, there's more discussion of like almost Mordor as a diplomatic faction. Because when they first get to Rohan, Aragorn is like, are you guys allies with Sauron? Like, are you guys, have you made a deal with him? So there's more of like a sort of, is this a diplomatic thing? It's less of treating Mordor as like a sort of ethereal evil force that nobody can negotiate with, and more of like, they're just a different faction that's aggressing.
Yeah, it's a country that you could have an alliance with.
Right.
Yeah, that is interesting. But the way that it's presented in the movie, essentially, is that you've got Gondor, and the capital city is Minas Tirith, and it's like an across-the-street neighbor from Barad-dûr, the Sauron fortress. It's like they can look over into each other's yards.
Yeah, you can see the fire of Mount Doom from Minas Tirith.
I really like is Minas Tirith. That's like the White City.
Yeah.
That was a really cool bit of setting design.
Yeah, it looks awesome, for sure. With the tree, the sort of barren tree at the top.
Wrapping up my thought on bullet point 3 here is that, like, okay, so now they're going to work together. So human faction 2, the Rohan, need to go to the Gondor. And during this, like, this whole little love triangle kind of concludes. Like, Aragorn lets down Éowyn's like, I got a hot elf girlfriend. Don't worry about it. And so now Éowyn, she's still a main character, though. She actually gets some pretty cool action in the third one. And so she's, like, now going to do the Mulan thing, where, like, she's going to be a soldier, but she's putting on armor so people don't realize that she's the princess. And she also brings Merry, that fourth elf, kind of like, I'm going to protect you, you're going to hang out with me, but let's all go to Gondor and battle the orcs.
Yeah, they sneak into the army because you get the sequence where Merry's trying to justify himself to Theoden. He's like, I want to fight. He's like, I'm not going to say anything more. And then you get Éomer, who's Éowyn's brother, and he's the leader of the Riders of Rohan, is like kind of mocking Merry's. He's like, I don't doubt your courage, I just doubt your reach, type of deal. So, yeah, Merry might be my favorite of the hobbits. He always seems like the one who's got like the most going on in the head. Like, he's like very can-do attitude.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, bullet point 4. So, meanwhile, Aragorn's got some stuff going on. So remember, he's actually the king of Gondor under stewardship. But first thing is he gets a sword. So the sword, I think, is mostly symbolic. He gets it from Elf Kingdom 1, Rivendell.
Yeah,
Yes,
Elrond, Arwen's dead.
Yeah, so remember, they show it in the first movie, the broken sword.
Yeah, and he like pokes it finger.
And
it's sharp.
And in the book, he actually sets off from Rivendell with the sword.
Okay.
So they kind of, one of the biggest differences character-wise between the books and the movies is that Aragorn has almost like a reluctant sort of leader arc in the movies, not present in the books. He shows up and he's like, I am the king of Elendil, or whatever. He's like, it is me.
And then the other thing he has to do, which is a sequence that I literally did not remember whatsoever, but they like point, like, there's the scary tunnel. Nobody goes in the scary tunnel. And he's like, well, I'm going to go in the scary tunnel. Why? So I can recruit an army of ghosts.
Yes.
I was like, I do not remember this whatsoever. But this actually happens. So he goes into the haunted tunnel, and Gimli and Legolas come with him. And they're like, oh, hey, ghosts, we're going to go fight the evil eye. And once we win, you can evaporate. Okay,
Yes.
cool. That was a little bit like galaxy brained for me.
Yeah, you sounded like you wanted to say something before.
Yeah, so we'll all have things to sprinkle in at various points. About the ghosts specifically, this is one of the biggest, or ends up being one of the biggest Deus Ex Machina moments for me, because it's like, wait a minute, you just have an endless swarm of ghosts who can, like, overpower an elephant like a cloud of flies and just devour it to nothing. It's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, the ghost and the handling of the ghosts is probably one of my biggest complaints with Return of the King. I feel like it makes the conclusion of the big battle, a little bit anticlimactic. But as for the way the ghosts work is that Isildur, who remember was the old king of Gondor like 2,000 years ago,
Okay.
he had made a treaty with the ghosts and said, hey, when we fight, you're going to come and help us. And they were like the people of the mountain or whatever. They're like, yep, we'll come and help you. But then they didn't do that. They fled into the mountains and chilled instead. So Isildur cursed them. Remember how I said there's more like king stuff in the books?
Yeah.
Kings can just do stuff. And so he cursed them. And so their spirits were unable to go into like wherever spirits go in Lord of the Rings. So Eragon comes back. He's like, hey, that was my grandpa. If you fight for me, I'll let you die. And they're like, nice. It sounds good. Sounds good to me.
But the production design is cool. It's another one of those moments where you're like, oh, this guy makes horror movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get like the
Very
layered
ghosty.
skin and bone ghosts where sometimes they're like skeletal and sometimes they're like fleshy. It's pretty cool looking.
All right, bullet point 5. This is our first big battle from Return of the King. So this is for the Gondor Human Faction 1, their capital city. So the orcs arrive, and they're like, oh, we battled orcs, we can do that. Except, they got elephants this time. Beware the elephants. And also they got the flying ring wraiths. I didn't know ring wraiths could fly. They didn't really do that in the first one, but turns out they can fly.
They got
too.
these wingling mounts that
And
they ride on.
It's a little bit like Helm's Deep in that it goes back and forth a couple of times. But finally, like you guys said, the ghosts arrive and they win the dang thing. But there are some casualties in this one. So the first one, this character who just kind of shows up out of nowhere at the start of Return of the King is the super ring wraith. He's the Witch King.
The Witch King of Angmar.
And he's kind of cool. He's got the Darth Vader mask that Sauron has at the beginning of Fellowship, or something like it, at least. So at one point, this is kind of off pod, we were talking about, I was like, somebody said Sauron. And I was like, wait, is he Darth Vader, the guy with the Darth Vader mask, or is he the Eye? But what I didn't realize is that they're kind of the same. At the beginning of Fellowship, Sauron has the Darth Vader mask. Except then the Witch King has it again in 3. So I think that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, they're similar masks. They're a little bit different, but they're definitely the same sort of jagged,
like it's like a
spiky,
tall
masky-
mask.
Yeah, with
pointy.
like a big open sort of mouth area.
Right. Okay. So, anyways, we have this battle, and the Witch King kills Theoden, who's the head of Human Faction 2, Rohan.
Right.
He's the king of them. He's about to die. He gets wounded. And Eowyn, who's the princess of them, comes in and is like, oh, you're dying. I'm sad. And marries with them. And, but she's actually the one who gets to kill the Witch King with the pretty, like, epic moment where she's like, Witch King's like, no man can kill me. And she's like, but I am no man. And she, like, rips her. It's like, oh, it's a princess. And then she stabs him. Great moment. And the other kind of casualty here is, like, remember the warden has gone kind of crazy. And he's like, I'm going to light myself on fire and my son too. And then he starts to do it, but they're like, no, don't light your son on fire. And so the son gets out, but he gets lit on fire. So he lights himself on fire, jumps off a cliff. So now the warden's dead too.
Yeah, the steward. So a couple of things about this. Some people don't like the I am no man. Like, obviously he meant no human. But
It's been a wordplay.
This was a specific thing. Tolkien, first of all, he did not like Shakespeare generally. And in Macbeth, a whole big thing is that Macbeth can't get killed by, like, man born of a woman, is what they said. And Instead, Macduff kills him because he was born by cesarean section, so he wasn't actually born. So that's how that
was
works.
from the womb untimely ripped.
Yeah, and then so Tolkien hated this. He was like, why not just have a woman kill him? That was his whole thing. So this whole thing is a dig at Shakespeare.
And there's another one too with the trees, because part of the battle in Macbeth is that the forest comes to Dunsinane or Elsinore or something. I think Elsinore is Hamlet. That's where Hamlet lives.
Right.
But anyway, it's like the army covers themselves with tree branches and to camouflage. And Tolkien said, that's stupid. There should actually be trees fighting the war.
Living trees.
Way better.
And you glossed over what my pick for the single most exciting epic sequence in the film, which is when the Rohirrim arrive and you get Theoden making like this speech about like the whole shields will be splintered, spears will be shaken, a sword day, a red day ere the sun rises. Now ride for ruin and for the world's ending, death. But he's like, death. And then he does the thing where he's got the sword and he's like knocking him along the spears. He's knocking him along the spears, and then you get the big pan out of the giant horde of horsemen, and then they ride in, and you get I think the Rohan theme might be my favorite, like the sort of the solo violin, the like that charge there. It gives me chills every time.
And I assume this must be the scene that people are talking about. Everybody likes to shout out the Ride of the Rohirrim.
Yeah.
But it kind of happens in the second one and the third one. It's like the tide of battle turns when the Rohirrim ride in twice.
Yeah, that's true. But I think the third one, to me, is like that one, because it's like everything's really dire, and I feel like it's more... You get to see more of the impact as the horde of horsemen slam into the
sweep through. You get the reaction shot from the Harvey Weinstein orc.
Yeah, the hideous one with the messed up arm who like sidesteps the catapult rock at one point. The orcs have all kinds of personality in these movies. You don't get like names or anything, but there are a few who you see in multiple scenes, and they're like they got a lot of personality despite not really saying anything.
And you mentioned the catapult. I just want to express my appreciation for all the siege machines in, especially Return of the King. They have those cool like D-Day landing craft ladders in Twin Towers to go up the walls of Helm's Deep.
2 towers,
but it just goes nuts in Return of the King. All kinds of machines, battering rams.
Grand is the big one that is oft memed. The giant pig battering ram gets memed a lot.
Yeah,
Grand.
And
got a name.
So just all these forces that keep joining the battle, it really made me think of when I would play with Great Adventures toys as a kid.
Yeah.
I talked about this back in our Court Jester episode, that I just really liked this line of toys from Fisher-Price. And it was like each year they would kind of roll out a new setting that you could play. So first it was knights, then it was pirates, and like eventually down the line they had like Egypt. And so that's kind of what this final battle feels like to me is, or at least the big one, the Pelennor, like the central battle that takes up like 2 of the 4 hours, but that you could play and have, now we've got the knights and the pirates and the ghosts, and everybody's coming together. And the elephants, the war elephants.
Yeah, the war elephants are so cool too. They're so cool. Big, and they're like when they're sweeping their tusks from left to right. Yeah. We had the castle one growing up.
All right, so bullet point 6. Around this time, as this battle's going on, Frodo and Sam, so they're finally led to the trap by Gollum. And this whole time, Frodo's kind of losing it, and he's really weighed down by the burden of the ring. So he snaps at Sam and turns on Sam because Gollum convinced him that Sam was working against him and ate food he shouldn't have eaten because he's fat. And finally, they end up in a giant spider's lair. That's where Gollum's been leading them. And the giant spider poisons Frodo, paralyzing him. Sam thinks he's dead for a second. But Sam manages to steal the ring. Now, we don't know this right away. This is a reveal later. But he manages to take the ring away from Frodo while Frodo is paralyzed. And some orcs just happen to stroll on into this place where the spider's den. And they find Frodo's paralyzed body and they capture him. And during all this tussle, Gollum disappears again. So that's kind of what happens with Sam and Frodo as this is going on.
Shelob, yeah. She's I forget what the name. She's the daughter of like this other bigger spider that destroys the trees that become the sun and the moon. It's like so Shelob's kind of a big deal, but
Okay.
she's that whole scene I love. It's so gross. Like the spider webs are stuck on him,
Yeah.
and like
And
the
his
big
face is all
spider
pale. Yeah.
with like the stinger.
It's unnerving. Yeah.
And it's like the skittering of the spider.
Mhm.
It's unsettling.
All right, point number 7. So Sam follows the orcs and he manages to free Frodo. So, okay, I guess part of this was like they got brought into Mordor as part of this capture. And now they're really close to Mount Doom, the volcano where they can destroy the ring. So you'd think, okay, we're just about there. But no, because the danger is bigger than ever now. Because if Sauron notices them with his big magic eye, then he will send all the orcs directly to them because he can like psychically communicate with his orcs. Like, oh, he's right there. Just go get him. He's right in our homeland. And so the Fellowship, luckily, managed to guess that all of this is going on and could be a problem. And they're like, all right, here's our plan. We're going to distract Sauron, the big eye, by going up to his front gate and doing another epic battle. Epic battle.
Yeah, we're going to go to
Here's another one.
Sauron's house now. It's
We're gonna-
like mainland Japan or something.
They're gonna knock on the door and say, "Hey, you want to fight a battle?"
And so the goal here is now we're going to distract Sauron so that Sam and Frodo can sneak into Mount Doom. And point number 8, this plan works. We do another epic battle here. So this one's right at the gate of Mordor. And as this battle's going on, Sauron's all distracted. Frodo and Sam get right into the fires of Mount Doom. It's like, I was actually kind of surprised because they're like climbing up and then all of a sudden they're there. And he's like holding the ring over the volcano. It's like, oh, we're here. We did it. And this is the exact moment that Frodo finally succumbs to the ring's thrall. And it kind of mirrors what we know what happened with the last human who owned the ring. Like he got to here and then decided to keep it. And so Frodo decides he's not going to destroy the ring. He's going to keep it. And so he slips it on his finger. So he's with Sam. We don't know it, but Gollum happens to be right there too.
Well, while they're hiking up the mountain, Gollum shows up again and starts attacking him.
Oh,
and
right.
then Sam and Gollum are tussling, and then that's when Frodo breaks off and is running to the fires of Mount Doom to throw it in. And then so Gollum was kind of already there, so we saw him. He showed up again to stop the destroying from happening.
And so Frodo, though, is like, nuh-uh. He slips the ring on, and he turns invisible. So that's like obviously the main power of the ring, at least as we visually see it, is you turn invisible when you put the ring on. But Gollum, who is well acquainted with the effects of the ring, manages to like see the footsteps and the dust kicking up and knows exactly where Frodo is and jumps on Frodo and bites off Frodo's finger where the ring is. And so Frodo is no longer invisible, no longer is the ring on him, and Frodo finally comes to his senses. So now he's tussling with Gollum, and finally he manages to throw the ring into the lava. Gollum like jumps as the ring is going down and grabs the ring, and he perishes in the lava as the ring falls into the lava. So he is like reunited with the ring for like a fraction of a second before he vaporizes in the lava of Mount Doom.
And it's so interesting because you see he's like desperately trying to stop the ring. He doesn't even care about his life. He's just trying to stop it from going into the lava. He's like holding it up because even as he's dying, he doesn't want it to be destroyed.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about lava and lava physics.
Yeah,
That
it wouldn't splash.
right. So humans just have an instinctual feeling that you should be able to dive into lava, like the DuckTales money pool.
Mm-hmm.
But it's rock and it's liquid, but it still has like the heaviness of rock. Like I think if you jumped onto lava, it would be not too different from jumping onto a bunch of rock.
Yeah, it'd be like trying to dive into cookie dough or something like that. Like it's dense, and you can like treat it as a liquid, but it's not.
You just wouldn't go down into it
You
the
wouldn't
same way that
splash.
you think.
You would splatter. You wouldn't dive in. So I guess if it's super duper hot, you would. But at that point, you would just be vaporized.
But the ring does hit the lava eventually, and it's like little light up things happens as it hits it, and Sauron panics, and the ring finally destroys. The Lord of the Rings culmination. The ring has been destroyed, but we still got 40 minutes left of the movie, at least in the theatrical. Probably more in the extended edition. So before we move on to bullet points 9 and 10 of this summary, any thoughts on the epic battle or anything that kind of led up to this?
This battle is definitely less epic than the previous one. You get a good speech from Aragorn and like a great satisfying moment where he says for Frodo, and he charges. The first people to charge after are Merry and Pippin, and then they're quickly overtaken as the humans charge as well. And it's like exciting action, but I don't think it. I think it's more of a side piece to the Frodo, Sam, Gollum stuff that's happening. They have their final focus there, and I love. There's a few things I love. Like they're both Gollum and Frodo are about to fall, but because Sam's there, Frodo gets pulled up.
Yeah,
and you get the whole "I can't carry it for you, Mr. Frodo, but I can carry you."
That was great
sequence. Yeah, Sam is really.
So can you carry him? Yeah. So Sam is definitely. We should talk a little bit about Sam and like the shadow of Sam. But the third movie is Sam's movie proper. That's where he gets like really gets his times.
Because he just goes into that tower and murders a bunch of orcs.
Yeah, like he gives 5 orcs. He's supposed to be like a little.
And he also fights off Shelob by himself.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So I think we're about to wrap this film, and then I definitely want to dive in a little bit to just like specific actors and elements of the production. But Sean Astin shines in this. We got Rudy back.
Yeah, the everyman.
All right, bullet point 9. Okay, so I don't know about you guys, but I remember after this movie came out, it was kind of like a joke that this movie has a whole bunch of different endings. You think it's about to end, and then there's another ending that needs to happen.
Yeah.
So here, last 2 bullet points are about these multiple endings. So first one, Sam saves Frodo from falling into the lava. And not only does the destruction of the ring cause like Sauron's eye tower to collapse, but also hey, all of Mordor is caving in, like this seismic activity, like a sinkhole the size of a town, you know?
Yeah, and
everything's getting sucked in.
And Mount Doom erupts as well, so it's like it's like a cataclysm.
Right.
Happens.
And it seems like Frodo and Sam, no way they're going to survive this because like the world is crumbling around them, but they happen to find the one rock that doesn't get taken over by the lava. And then how could you get out when there's lava everywhere? Well, the eagles exist. Don't forget the eagles. They come back and they rescue Sam and Frodo just as like Frodo's kind of passing out from exhaustion. And
I think when they both get picked up, they're passed out.
Yeah. And so I guess the final surviving tally of the Fellowship from the first movie. So Boromir died in the first one, Ned Stark. Gandalf temporarily died in the first one and came back, but nobody else from the Fellowship died in either of the second or third movie. So we have all 4 hobbits survived, Aragorn, Gimli, Legolas survived, and we have new Gandalf, the White, who made it out.
Frodo is the same, except down half of a finger.
That's true too, yeah.
Right, but there's also the theme that you don't walk away from this unchanged.
Right, yeah. Everybody is changed is a big deal about and to speak on the sort of endings thing, I did notice when I was watching the theatrical cut that there's like a kind of a big fade to black.
It's the fades to black. There's multiple fades to black.
There's a fade to black.
And then there's a fade to white.
When they're lying on the rock. And then, just kidding, the eagles are here. So I definitely felt that a little bit. But it definitely feels like everything after the ring it's like an epilogue.
Right.
Which feels earned in the fact that this is such a epic piece. Like, it's so long. But the fact that it's the 40 minutes of one of the movies, it feels like a lot because it's concentrated in a single point. But like for a book series, like you would not be shocked to have a lengthy epilogue after a big, long, epic thing. It's just because it comes.
Although a funny anecdote that I sometimes repeat about this movie is that my wife, Katie, has read this series, but maybe the first time she read it, and I don't know if she's reread it since, but she got to the part where the ring got destroyed, and she saw that it was like 100 pages left. She's like, you know what? The ring got destroyed. I think I'm done with this. And then closed the book, and I don't know. If
none of the scenes seem unnecessary to me, but the structure just really does kind of push in your face that it's like, I thought the movie was done.
Yeah.
They're using the tools that would suggest that the movie was over.
All right. So that's like the stuff that happens in the present timeline. So bullet point 10 is the denouement. This is what really feels like an epilogue to me. So the first is that Frodo awakes in this like bright white room, really cool shot, honestly, and reunites with his friends, like heartfelt reunion with everyone. And then we see that time passes on the Order. I think they say it's like a few years.
4 years, I think, is what Frodo eventually says.
And we realize that, hey, he wrote The Lord of the Rings, just like he saw Bilbo at the beginning wrote The Hobbit, like that we read, except he wrote it in this universe.
They're regular Darren Shans.
And then I think that also, I don't know if we talked about this on pod recently. I definitely talked about someone recently about this, but I think The Great Gatsby has this element too.
Do you know what also does is The Outsiders? Because remember, it ends with him starting writing The Outsiders, because it's like a school report. Yeah.
But anyways, Sam marries a Hobbit girl named Rosie, completely unmentioned, except for like right when they're about to walk up, they're like, oh, and remember Rosie? She was that one girl that I've always had a crush on. Remember her, even though we hadn't heard from her the entire series leading up.
She is
the extended edition has more scenes with her.
Yeah, has more Rosie.
You see her in the Fellowship at the beginning. At the very beginning, Frodo forces like Sam to go dance with her, but you do not get much Rosie stuff. It's more of like also my hometown crush is there.
Yeah, it's very funny the way it is in the theatrical, because it's like just a moment of like, this is the peak of the Sam Frodo / fic, because it's like they're clinging to each other on the lava pyre.
Yeah,
and it's like, this is the moment to confess the feelings. Oh, by the way, Frodo, I'm straight.
Yeah, I've thoughts on the shipping of Frodo and Sam in particular, but we can talk.
I want to talk
after.
about that too, for sure. But other things here in the denouement, Aragorn marries his elf girlfriend Arwen, and he officially becomes the king of Human Faction 1, the Gondors, and not clear what happens to Human Faction 2, Rohan. Something probably happens to
Eowyn
them.
marries Faramir. It's
Faramir.
Faramir is Boromir's brother.
That's only in the extended edition.
Okay,
You see them standing next to each other in the thing, and she's wearing a crown, and he's next to her. I think he might also be wearing a crown.
Okay.
But it's very loosely hinted. You get more of that in the
There's a
extended
scene in the
edition,
extended where they like come together and have a conversation and like hug.
In the
So
hospital.
they're the consolation prizes for each other.
Yeah.
And then we get some happily ever after. The hobbits have a drink, and then now also another epilogue. You think it's done because they have their one last drink together in the bar, but then we have one last scene, and it's like, well, what's going to happen to Frodo long term? And Gandalf's like, hey, come sail to heaven with me. You and Bilbo will sail to heaven with me and some of the elves. And I think some of the elves are there.
Yeah, you see Galadriel and Mr. Anderson. What's the guy's name? Hugo Weaving. He's there as well. Elrond half elf or whatever his name is.
Elrond Hubbard.
Yeah. So yeah, and then the third guy, Galadriel's consort.
Yeah.
What's his name? Celeborn.
It's either Celeborn or Celeborn, I guess.
Yeah. He's there as well.
And so then they
Oh,
say
those are the
goodbye.
three with the rings, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is like, to me, kind of what the Lord of the Rings is about, and what kind of diminishes it in my eyes is just that it feels very defeatist. Like we talked about in our last coverage of this subject, that the world of Middle-earth kind of gradually becomes our world. Like we're to understand that we're in the 7th age of Arda. But like beauty and magic has left the world. Like it's kind of inevitably the story that the West will decline, and like we're in this kind of lesser state of the world. There's just less greatness and grandeur now. And it's like, I don't feel good about that. I don't like that.
Yeah, Tolkien had a lot of like thoughts about like the fall of man in a world in decline, and like a post Garden of Eden kind of sense. So yeah, you definitely feel that. And I think a generous reading or an optimistic reading would be that it's like the time of elves is over, and they're handing it over to men now to be the stewards of the world, which is why you get like Aragorn. He's like, and now comes the age of the king, or whatever that Gandalf says there. But yeah, it definitely has the world is trending mundane at the very least, if not in full decline. Magic, because the dragons are all gone, and now Sauron's been destroyed, and the elves are leaving. So a lot of the more magical elements are fleeing from the world.
But it is resonant, and I have found, like, even in real world stories, it seems like there are cases where once you've lived the most intense, like, moment that you're ever going to have on the world stage, it's like, what do you do after that? Mm-hmm. Like, even, like, I read about the stories of the people who were involved in, like, the O.J. Simpson trial. And it's like the prosecutors who lost the case kind of didn't really do anything after that. It kind of ruined their careers. But, like, even a lot of the, like, people on the defense team, it's like that was their big moment, and they never did anything that big again. And more on the topic is veterans of wars. It's like you go and you face these extreme experiences that whether you win or lose, you come back and, like, the people that you are living alongside don't share these experiences. Yeah. They're not shaped in this same way. And it's like you're never really at that level of intensity again. And it's like you've got these mixed feelings and this trauma that's left behind.
My favorite representation of that concept is in the, I think it's 1930 film, All Quiet on the Western Front. So they ship off to battle, and they're like all optimistic. And then it's, of course, traumatizing, brutal, violent. And they, at least one of the characters, I forget how many of them, end up being able to go home. But, like, the people at home who haven't been to war, he, like, can't relate to them anymore. He's like, I've been, like, this super intense, you're always fighting for your lifestyle. And now I don't get normal life anymore. And so his conclusion is, like, I need to go back to war. I need that surge of thrill and being able to connect with people at that high stakes again. And so he goes back, which is, like, kind of crazy. But
yeah. And then obviously Tolkien was a World War I vet, and, like, he had a friend group before, and half of them died in World War I. So that was, like, I think a big deal for him. And while he was writing Lord of the Rings, World War II was happening, and two of his sons were fighting in the war while it was happening. So certainly a lot of this, obviously, there's a lot of influence from when he was a soldier, and sort of the state of the world definitely carry into the movie. And you can really see it. I remember it struck me this time, the scene at the end where the four guys are drinking at the bar. They're, like, not really happy. They're kind of like, they almost look shell-shocked when they're sitting there about to have the glass of ale at the bar, because around them is, like, all these, like, jovial Shire people who were completely isolated, or insulated rather, from what was happening in the broader world. But meanwhile, these guys, like, one of them, like, helped kill the Witch King of Angmar, and two of them were involved in the
Mount Doom.
Yeah, Mount Doom. And then you've got Pippin, who was, like, he was very active. He thought he was going to die until he fought in the siege at Minas Tirith and everything like that. So it definitely, there's while there is triumph, there's a strong sense of the lingering impact that going through these experiences had on the hobbits, especially Frodo, because he bore the burden of the ring for the entire year or whatever they were hiking from the Shire up to Mount Doom.
Yeah, it's like the ring took over Frodo's life. It struck me that Bilbo and Frodo, as well as Gandalf, are, like, very sexless. It's like they kind of exist to have this quest, especially Bilbo and Frodo. It's like this is the purpose of their life, and once it's completed, there is nothing else.
So
it's
they
like,
get to sail off to heaven.
Yes.
Yeah, they get diminished. And
guess I'll die.
Yeah. Although I think technically in the books, in the appendices, Sam eventually goes off as well. Like,
oh, really?
And basically anybody who touched the ring ends up going off to the west.
Huh.
But it's obviously not as big of a deal as with Frodo there.
So that wraps Lord of the Rings, the trilogy. We did it. Let's hit some discussion topics, guys.
Do we want to any final plot comment? Oh, I was going to say, you glossed over in your plot summary the most emotional moment in the entire trilogy, which is when they're at the crowning of Aragorn, and then everybody's bowing, and then I'm getting misty just thinking about it. The hobbits are about to go to bow, and then he says, "You bow for no one," and then everybody sort of bows down to the hobbits, and they're finally like, it's just so like
It's a good moment.
yeah.
I feel like Merry and Pippin really benefited by association with Frodo and Sam in that moment.
Well,
Probably.
It's like they played big roles, but I don't know if the king bowing to Merry and Pippin, I don't know if they're quite there.
I was actually I don't know. I kind of always had the impression, just from the way people talked about him, that Merry and Pippin were just like the clowns on the side. But honestly, they have more in the plot than I don't know. Like I said, like Legolas and Gimli.
Yeah.
They have a lot of bearing on the way things. Like they convince the trees to go and battle the Wizard Tower.
And then they both have big roles in the battles in the third one, too.
Yeah, and even then, I think it's a comment on how outsized their role is compared to the expectation of a Hobbit are supposed to be these super sort of down to earth provincial people, and then like Merry again helps kill the Witch King of Angmar, and Pippin is the one who tricks the Ents into fighting the war. So you get all these it's a very they do a lot, especially compared to the expectation, because in the book it's very clear that Elrond does not want Merry and Pippin to go with the Fellowship. They've got Frodo as the ring bearer and Sam as his manservant, but then they don't want the other. And then Gandalf's like, listen, nobody here can stand up to the temptation. We don't know what any of us are going to be useful for. So let's just, there's no point. They're very loyal to Frodo, so let's just send them along anyway. And they turn out to be like massive contributors in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, don't underestimate hobbits as a big theme. It's kind of funny in the book of Fellowship because there are like two other people there who are just not in the movie, who it seems like these are going to be the two guys.
Fatty Bulger.
It's like, let's send Merry and Pippin instead. Because there's this like elf warrior who's
Glorfindel.
there. Yeah, that they gave his part to Arwen. Because she casts the spell that makes the river wash the Nazgul horses away. In the book, there's an elf dude who does that, and it seems like he's lined up to go on the trip. And then they're like, "Well, I'm Merry and Pippin."
Yeah, and then there's a fifth Hobbit who's like their buddy at the beginning. His name is Fatty Bulger, and he's like, I'll stay behind and watch over because in the book, Frodo sells Bag End and buys a house somewhere else, so he's pretending that he's moving when he's actually leaving. And then Fatty Bulger, who's their buddy, is like, hey, I'll watch over the house while you guys go. So, he was the fifth Hobbit who didn't get to attend. Poor Fatty Bulger.
So let's get to the a few more of our overarching thoughts on the series. So Brian brought up the casting, and I think...
Wait, I'm sorry. Before that, I told you guys I would prepare a sort of a thesis for why I consider these to be my favorite movies of all time.
Sure.
If you want me to lay out the 4 main reasons, it's really 4.5, with the 0th reason being nostalgia and personal taste, right? All right. So the first reason I consider these to be my favorite is that the story contains some of the most grandiose and epic set pieces in cinema history, from the Mines of Moria, the Siege of Helm's Deep, the Fires of Mount Doom, and they're all rendered brilliantly on screen. And secondly, it is a marvel in tone in that it manages to feel simultaneously fantastical and realistic. So the elements themselves, everything is very fantasy-oriented. However, the way they are rendered on screen, from the metal armor and the orcs are very physical, everything feels visceral and real. And it feels very lived in as a world. And third, the themes of the film feel very essential and fundamental. It's the protagonists are super virtuous and heroic. The antagonists are treacherous. The conflict is dire and desperate, and at the center is fantastic MacGuffin, the ring, which carries the weight of all of human vice without feeling overly contrived. And finally, the production feels like a lightning in a bottle moment. The cast is nearly perfect. The effects, both the practical and the CG stuff, hold up shockingly well, even almost 25 years later. The soundtrack is one of the best of all time, and the script is extremely reverent to the source material without obsessing over every detail in a way that would detract from the actual production. And you can really feel the love that was put into the production of the trilogy and the faith that Peter Jackson and everybody else involved had in the project. So that's my sort of thesis statement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also want to express my deep admiration for this as a filmmaking project. Just every facet of it, you can tell they were really invested in doing it right and just bringing their all to bear. Just think all the armor that they had to make, all the real horses that they got together. I learned, I don't know if it was from these documentaries or just in the lead up, that a lot of the riders are women who had their own horses, and they're like, we need a bunch of horses, just everybody bring your horse, and then they like put armor and beards on them to hide that they were women.
Yeah, they had 250, like the charge of the Rohirrim is at the end of or in the middle of the third movie, is a 6,000 horsemen, but they had 250 real horsemen do the charge, and then the other were, the rest of them were CG. But 250 is still a lot of horsemen to be charging there. All right, you wanted to talk about the casting?
Sure, we can talk about the cast. So I don't think it's controversial to say the cast is overall quite strong. I was wondering if you guys had a couple of favorite castings.
The one that stands out to me, probably Andy Serkis. He's so good as Gollum.
Yeah.
I don't know if you could have a more believable gremlin than like the way his voice comes off, and even he's just so good. And if you see all the mocap stuff, like when he's diving through the rivers and stuff like that, Andy Serkis actually did all of the physical stunts for that. It's just he had the mocap suit on, so he is phenomenal.
And he really carved out a niche for himself as the mocap guy. He went on to be King Kong, and then of course the central ape Caesar in the recent Planet of the Apes movies.
Mm-hmm. And let me think if there's anybody else. And obviously, like Ian McKellen as Gandalf is fantastic. He's like manages to strike the balance, sort of wise but whimsical tone that a wizard like Gandalf is more of like a sort of frontier, like kind of good with the children, like with the fireworks and everything, sort of homespun wisdom compared to Saruman, who's more grandiose. Mm-hmm. So Ian McKellen is also fantastic, I think.
Yeah.
Wasn't he nominated for an Oscar for at least one of them?
For the first one, Ian McKellen was nominated for
Best Supporting?
For Best Supporting, that's right. And so we tend to think of Return of the King as the one that swept the awards. It definitely cleaned up. 11 nominations, 11 wins. Mm-hmm. But I learned Fellowship of the Ring had 13 nominations.
Wow.
It won 4 Oscars. It won for cinematography, visual effects, I think production design, and score.
From the cast, I want to shout out. So I think John Rhys Davies as Gimli. It's kind of, I think he best embodies the character. He like really feels like a silly little dwarf with his voice and the way that he kind of looks and carries himself. And he manages to kind of be funny, but also like kind of blend in with the world. Although I did like stick out to me that you're like, okay, well, it's humans, dwarves, and elves. Like those are the 3 big things. They kind of represent different ends on a triangle of the nature of the species of the good guys. But then the dwarves are really not a factor. It's really just humans mostly with a little bit of elves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the dwarves don't do much because they're in their holes. Yeah. And they're in their mountain kingdoms. You don't see them on the outside very much, at least in the movies.
Love Cate Blanchett. Honestly, pretty much all the leads are good. I really like how Frodo was tackled by Elijah Wood. It's like it's kind of a hard role to play because you gotta have this sort of guilelessness to you to be believable as Frodo, but then you also have to be able to go to some dark places. I was a little less convinced by him going to the dark places, but I still think it's overall like about as good as you could hope for someone to do, and because he still kind of has like that almost childlike energy to him.
He's like naive. It's a very internal role. It's like it's just a lot of conflicted expressions and like sort of lingering on stuff, and like apparently some of the mannerisms were developed from what Elijah Wood was just doing, like stroking the ring a lot. I think he was just doing that on set when it was around his neck, so they added it as like a big part of his character.
A lot of these movies are carried by Elijah Wood's eyes. He has these intense blue eyes that just jump out of the screen.
And then I'm gonna stand for Sean Astin, Rudy. So let's talk about Sam. Like I kind of heard the take that Sam is the real hero of the story, and I think there's a little bit to that. Although I kind of admired that pretty much everybody has important stuff to do. So there's not like one person. I mean, Gandalf gets to come back from the dead. I was not always clear what Gandalf's magic was, I have to say.
You get a few more physical representations, but magic in general in this is like just like force and influence, it feels like. Like in the books, at one point he lights a circle of trees on fire when they're getting chased by wolves. But you don't really get as much physical manifestations of the magic.
It's like he talks to a moth. There's the scene when the Rohirrim are riding in one of the times that he like brings the sun with them.
There's a lot of light stuff. And then remember when they're chasing the harried Gondor people, he rides down and is like, hey, get out of here, Nazgul. I've got a light stick.
Yeah.
And he does the exorcism on the cursed king.
And then I don't think this is in the non-extended edition. When you get Saruman like yodeling into the mountains to make the and then like the snows come down.
Sounds like Trollolo.
Yeah.
As far as smaller castings, I really like. I mean, Kate Blanchett is perfect. We've already said. I really like Brad Dourif as Wormtongue too. He really perfects the kind of sliminess, but he's also got this weird, intense energy about him.
I'm not sure it's possible to be greasier than he is in that movie. One, I would say, on the character who I think is probably worst cast in that I don't think it necessarily matches is Éowyn. She feels a little bit too frail for my vision of the character. She's more of like a warrior princess in the books, I think, like, and you kind of would expect like a stouter woman.
I think Miranda Otto is the name of the actress.
Yeah, she was good for what she had. It's just her build I don't think reflects what I imagine.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I just kind of feel underwhelmed by Éowyn overall, which makes me feel all the worse for her. It's just like, what an unremarkable person. And actually, in rewatches of the movies, I've come to see more possibility, I guess, with her. Because the first couple times I watched the series, I just thought, well, Aragorn's got his elf girlfriend, and he's pretty upfront that he has the elf girlfriend all along. So it's like, she should just not even be bothering hanging around him. Except there is like a lot of back and forth in the second and third one of like, you don't know what's going to happen with Arwen. It kind of seems like they're on a break, you know?
Well,
it's like he kind of sent her away. He's like, you shouldn't mess with me. You should go, Arwen, to the elf lands.
Yeah, I think there's this sort of, it's like, oh, she's going to leave to the west, and he's like, oh, it was a dream within a dream, or he says something like that. But then she has a vision of having a kid, and she's like, well, I got to go have a kid with the king. So that she decides to stay.
But at least for a while, yeah, it seems like there is some uncertainty.
Potential, yeah. Because remember, he shuts her down after... Elrond brings the sword is when Aragorn, he's like, so I think him getting the sword is like, you've got a girlfriend at home, Aragorn.
Yeah, so he did kind of string her along a little bit, which I hadn't picked up on before.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about another thing that I think is uncontroversially great. It's already been shouted out, but the score by Howard Shore, pretty tremendous score. I would give the score by itself a masterpiece rating for sure. It's just this huge, sweeping, it kind of tells the story by itself. It's got this big variety of themes. It's got some really hummable and memorable tunes to it, just kind of tuneful. But it's not exactly quite so romantic as like a John Williams score. It's got like kind of its own flavor to it, Howard Shore. But I think it is really tremendous. And in particular, Fellowship is one that I just keep coming back to because I don't think it's quite as complex as the second and third ones that kind of do variations on familiar themes. But the way that it kind of lays out all of the different themes. Okay, here's the Hobbit theme. Okay, here's the orc theme. Okay, here's the elf theme. And then like you kind of just get all of them. I really like just listening to the Fellowship soundtrack.
Yeah, I think in the movies, I don't know if there's a score or movies that use like leitmotifs better. Like you'll have Frodo and Sam on the mountains, on Mount Doom, or in some dire situation, and then they'll start talking about the Shire, and you'll get the in the soundtrack, and immediately you're brought back to grassy fields and stuff like that. So it just uses these themes so well, and to like set the tone and bring you certain places and put certain things in mind.
Yeah, I think the best movies, my favorite movies, use music in this way. It's like very present score and almost bombastic at certain places. Mm-hmm. And yeah, the leitmotifs, where they're associated with people or places, and so you get that kind of lizard brain memory association, emotional. I like it. I feel like they don't do it enough. This was already, by this point, it was kind of like a holdover from an earlier era, but I think other ones around this time that were still doing it well were Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah. Yeah, I watched it was like a YouTube video from like some guy who does talks about movie soundtracks, how the Marvel movies and the Avengers, they basically have no leitmotifs. Despite how like sprawling a project they are, there's like very limited use of these like callbacks via music. And with like the exception of the Avengers soundtrack, which is like the Avengers theme, which is a single piece. Yeah, it's like you get one thing, but other than that, they don't use it. And I really think in Lord of the Rings, it aids in setting the tone and like just sort of centralizing the audience's attention. It really snaps certain things into focus. If you're using like the sort of eerie ring theme, you know that you're supposed to be picturing stuff about the ring right now. Or if you're using the Shire theme, you're supposed to be feeling these feelings of nostalgia. Or with Rohan, it's sort of this like kingdom in decline, sort of desperate last breath thing. And so just the way the motifs are woven into the score really brings out these sort of themes to their, zenith.
I think there's one series that does it better, and that is Star Wars, at least the original trilogy, which would still be my pick for the greatest score ever composed. I would put it above Howard Shore's, but I think Howard Shore's, I agree with exactly with what Brian said, that the best movies, especially if you want to like be in the realm of like adventures, require great tuneful scores that have that use, like you said, the music itself to tell a story. I mean, like, for example, I don't think I would count How to Train Your Dragon among my 100 favorite movies if it didn't have that score that kind of does it by itself, So I think that one's John Powell. Recently, The Batman by Michael Giacchino, or however you say his name, is up there. And then I just listened, like, the day before we're recording this, to the new Fantastic Four soundtrack. It just got streamed, and I had read buzz that it was really good, and I listened to it, and it's really good. But it's kind of doing like a sort of it's Michael Giacchino again, I'm probably saying his name wrong. I have no idea, but he's kind of doing a variation on what he did with The Incredibles, which was like kind of throwing back to the '60s and stuff.
Yeah,
but,
the Spider-Verse movies both have really good soundtracks.
They do too, for sure.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to maybe talk about a few more like overarching sections. One is nitpicks and plot questions kind of merged together, so we can do that. And then I want to talk about maybe some of our like overarching reads of the series. So talking about like some nitpicks and some questions. One, and this is like kind of a biggie, I don't get the ring. I don't know what the ring does. What does the ring do? I don't want a ring that turns me invisible and makes me angry. I want a ring that shoots lasers. Give me a laser ring and I'll defeat the One Ring, because my ring can shoot lasers. I don't care if you're invisible. I'll shoot you with my lasers.
All right, so let me explain who Sauron is, and I think that will probably answer some of the questions. So originally, there are these. There's Eru Ilúvatar, who's God, and then he had the Valar, who were like the top dog angel people, and then below them are the Maiar. And the strongest Valar was this guy, I forget what his original name was, but he was Morgoth, who was the bad one. He was Satan, basically, Lucifer. And so he waged war against the rest of the Valar, and a whole bunch of the Maiar sided with him, including Sauron. Sauron was like his top lieutenant. But eventually, Morgoth lost that war and was banished to wherever, and then Sauron fled. So he was in Middle-earth. And then Sauron started to conquer Middle-earth, and then the Númenóreans, who were the peak humans, they stopped him from conquering, and they captured him. And within a couple of years, Sauron had like deceived them into making him like the second in command. And then he convinced them to invade Valinor, which is where all the gods live. And because of that, first of all, they made the world not flat, and they bent it so nobody else can sail to the west. That's why it's the last boat to the west at the end. And they also sunk Numenor, and at that point, Sauron lost his body, essentially. And so after this, Sauron teaches, I think it's actually in somewhere in there, he teaches the elves how to make these rings, and So he disguises himself as somebody and then teaches the elves how to forge these rings. And after they forge a whole bunch of rings of power, he forges his own and he imbues a whole bunch of his essence. Remember, he's basically like a divine being. So he puts all of his power, which is mostly surrounded around deception and influencing people, into the ring. And so if you have the ring, in theory, you can control Sauron's power to influence people and deceive people and be like, you have this godly power. So whereas, which is why he needs it back, because it has all of his power in it. So he's kind of gaining forces in order to get it back. But when he loses it, he loses his physical form because he's imbued his essence in it. And also all of his divine power of deception and influence are within it. So it's less of like it can shoot lasers and more of like it enables you to influence people, essentially. But it also corrupts you at the same time because Sauron is a deceiver and his powers are very corrupting.
It also makes you immortal.
Yes.
So I think those two things, like, it would be a very valuable, powerful, magical item if it just made you invisible and immortal. But it wouldn't be, I think Dan Carlin refers to certain things as a war-winning tool. It's like something that makes you immortal and invisible doesn't necessarily seem like a war-winning tool. Like, I can understand coveted, I can understand powerful. I don't know if this is the thing that changes the fate of the world.
But it also has this divine power imbued in it, which is Sauron's like essence.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Sort of, yeah.
I also get the sense, I don't know that this is text, but that it kind of strengthens whatever your characteristics are. The bad ones, at least. Like the ring is going to have a slightly different effect depending on whoever wields it, but it's like different flavors.
Right, that's why Galadriel talks about, she's like, you would have a queen.
The thing that's confusing to me, though, is like, it doesn't seem pleasant to wear it. It's like, I would get it a little bit more if it was like, you put it on and all of a sudden the world is warping around you to your every whim.
Uh-huh.
But like, it seems like, it gives you a tummy ache and you can't see straight.
I think that is partially, the reason it seems like that is because Frodo is resisting its power.
Okay.
Like, for example, Gollum and, like, they're corrupted by it, but they don't, like, Bilbo never became super villainous until it sort of gained strength and started wanting to go back to his master. The other thing is, we don't really get any concrete examples of the ring, like, influencing or changing people.
Right.
It's more like portrayed as, you're right, as a burden. But I think part of that comes from them trying to resist the ring's influence.
And I do kind of get it's a MacGuffin, so like that's
right.
fine. Like it doesn't need to be the thing.
Yeah, it's
if everybody accepts that it's important, that's what's important to the story.
It's corruption, it's addiction. Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah, it's like deceit and sort of selfishness as well.
And I think to some extent it's been like people have kind of read it a little bit as like I don't think this was on Tolkien's mind, but in some ways it feels a little bit like the A-bomb.
Yeah.
Because it's like an all-powerful thing that if like one person gets the advantage on it, they dominate. Like they have the power that can destroy anyone else. And so everybody's trying to get it first, get the heads up on it and own it. But I don't like, I think when he was writing this, that wasn't like a widespread thing. But I'm not 100% sure, honestly.
I don't think it was. There might have been some discussion of it, but I doubt. Tolkien probably thought in more legendary sort of abstract terms because he didn't
like allegory.
Yes.
He was opposed to allegory. One thing standing for one thing.
Like as a direct stand-in, he generally hated it. He was obsessive about like old myths and stuff like that. So I think you should read a lot of it more as like power more abstractly or influence more abstractly than something concrete that the ring does.
Mm-hmm.
I've been getting memes. Lord of the Rings memes, as one does on my feed. You click one and you get more. But one that I saw lately was, it was just a text post, but it's like, I think if I were in a high fantasy realm, I would simply not be corrupted by the evil object.
Yeah.
But then I remembered that I'm constantly taking psychic damage from an amulet that I carry in my pocket. And it's talking about smartphones, of course.
Yeah.
And then there was discussion under that of how it's like the Palantir or whatever. It's like you're connected to this evil network that's
at all times,
constantly poisoning your brain.
Yeah, why does Frodo not simply resist the evil corruption that is all corrupting?
One that made me laugh recently was okay, we know that Gandalf can't be the one to bring it in because he will he'll be corrupted by it. But we do know that he can pick it up with pliers and put it in the fire. So why not just hold it in the pliers and walk all the way to Mount Doom? If he can do that. That one made me laugh.
Yeah, there's a lot of like the quibbling about there were different. Why does it have to be Frodo? But I think that's kind of the point. Is that Frodo is very incorruptible. He's like the peak, like the hobbits and how provincial they are, how their primary concerns are good food and beer and stuff like that. It means they are completely uninterested in power and influence, and that's why Frodo was the right one for the burden.
And I think Tolkien, didn't he kind of see like hobbits as like classic British values to some extent?
Like rural British folk,
like agrarian. Yeah, because I think that's another theme. We talked a little bit about this, but like intentional or not, like, okay, the dwarfs are very depicted as very mechanical. Mm-hmm. Like their music, their technology is more chains and gears and rattling.
When you say dwarves, did you mean orcs?
Orcs. Sorry, yes. I said dwarves, but I meant orcs. The orcs are depicted more as being associated with like the mechanical and the industrial.
Yeah. Which is in the Star Wars movies as well. So that was what I was thinking about watching this time, is that you've got, very clear to me that the Lord of the Rings books probably influenced the Star Wars films, but then the Star Wars films end up influencing the Lord of the Rings films.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, oh, for sure.
Yeah, and Tolkien definitely was broadly anti-industry in that he grew up. So Tolkien was kind of interesting. He was born in in South Africa, and his dad died when he was young, and so he was living in kind of rural Britain, and he had this particular space he lived that was rural, and he really loved it. It was like trees and nature and everything. And then his mom died, and so he moved into the city to be schooled, and he hated the industrial area of the city. So he always held very strongly to like rural trees and everything. He was obsessed with trees and stuff like that.
He even made them characters in the story.
Right, exactly, yeah.
So one thing that I said I would bring up again, and that was basically what was the narrative payoff on Frodo constantly like sparing and keeping around Gollum? And I think some of it is just thematic, but after thinking about it for a while, like at the time when he's trying to sacrifice his ring, it turned out it's almost like an ironic twist. Like you needed someone who understood the corruption to stop the corruption, to stop Frodo from like fully being taken over by it, by like chomping off his finger, seeing where he was walking. Because if it had just been Sam there, Frodo would have gotten away and he would have been like the new guy who got to the doom and then didn't toss it in. But because Gollum was there, because Gollum had been spared, he chewed off Frodo's finger. Frodo was like, oh, wait, I need to kill the bad thing. And then he killed the bad thing.
Well, Frodo they kind of tussled and then Gollum fell in. It's not like he threw him in. It's more like, so I think basically the way the ring works is you cannot willingly give it up, more or less.
Okay.
And so it was in the only reason that they were able to destroy the ring was because they had spared Gollum, because nobody would have been able to willingly give up the ring. So Frodo didn't willingly give up the ring. It was taken from him, and Gollum accidentally fell in the lava, basically. So, yeah, without Gollum, they wouldn't have been able to actually do it. And obviously, yeah, so the practical payoff in the story is that Gollum is the one who ends up destroying the ring because he pulls it off he bites off Frodo's finger and then falls into the lava. The thematic payoff is that an act of mercy ends up winning the day, I think.
Yeah.
So, and I think the whole premise of like mercy and redemption and everything, sort of sparing people, is very prevalent throughout the.
I guess I was expecting it to be a little bit more concrete, like, oh, you spared Gollum, and because you did, this happened. It's like I felt like it would have been a nice narrative thing. It's a little bit ambiguous, but it does kind of click at the end.
Yeah, I guess the whole because you did this happen is because you did this, Frodo failed in his attempt at not saving the ring. So if that's the concrete action, I would put it there. Yeah.
All right. So a couple more high level, we can maybe toss out some high level things. I do want to talk about Star Wars versus Lord of the Rings just a little bit more. And so I like Star Wars, at least the first two movies, a little bit more than Lord of the Rings. But I think that's because Star Wars was kind of built from the ground up as a movie. and is like designed to be a movie experience. And like the story isn't as rich, but I don't know. Where do you guys stand on Star Wars versus Lord of the Rings? Like how they relate and which one is like better at being a movie?
To me, the Lord of the Rings, and in general, Lord of the Rings has always felt like it has more depth and less like of a swashbuckling adventure, whereas the Star Wars movies feel like more adventure movies. And I started this by saying that the Lord of the Rings movies are my favorite of all time, so it's not. I don't think it would be controversial for me to say I prefer the Lord of the Rings movies, but I do really like the Star Wars movies, especially the original trilogy, for what they are, which to me is like kind of almost campy, not quite campy, but adventure movies with a lot of fun practical effects and stuff like that, but not as much richness or depth compared to the Lord of the Rings movies.
I would say I like Star Wars a little more. I don't know. I like you said, it's got that John Williams score that's excellent, and the production design is really, really cool. And I like that so much of it came out of George Lucas's head, but then maybe tempered a bit by the craftsmen around him, and that it just feels like it's coming straight from the source to a degree. And I mean, we saw with the prequels that can maybe go a little bit too far in a few places, but it feels unique. I also think the Lord of the Rings movies feel pretty unique.
For sure, yeah. And the reason I bring that up is because I think it was on Pod. We talked about, I complained, or Will complained that I was like, just a guy made it up, which is, I think, a line that I said.
Yeah, you said, just because a guy made it up doesn't mean I have to care about it, or something like that. And then I said, can't you apply that to Star Wars as well, or anything like that?
And I guess that's why I kind of brought it up again. But like, circling back to that concept, because Star Wars was designed from the ground up as a movie, for whatever reason, like, it feels like it's designed with the appropriate amount of scope of stuff to care about. Whereas Lord of the Rings, I still get the sensation of like there's too much stuff here for what should be in a movie.
I could feel that, and I guess my question is, so I know a decent amount about the lore, but I sometimes wonder, especially when I watch something knowing the lore, like how much does my appreciation come from knowing the lore, and how important is the lore really to enjoy Lord of the Rings? Because I think you can, like, even some of the names can gloss by, but if you still get the thematic content, and obviously the epic battles and stuff like that, I think you can get 8/10 of the experience without knowing the details of the lore.
I think 8/10 is about the right amount. Like for me, I went into it this week having known nothing, and obviously I spoke. I mean, I think you can say I more or less got the point of the story when I was going through the recap. So like obviously you can, but I do think that you kind of need to like, okay, what's Rohan versus Gondor, and why are those important? Like it's not like quite so elegant as like Rebels versus Empire. Like there's a couple extra layers to it. And I think if you're not like really paying attention to like get the distinction between like, oh, here's this king versus this king and this kingdom versus this kingdom and this faction versus this faction, you'll get like, there'll be moments you're like, wait, these guys just came in, these humans just came in, but I thought the orcs were already fighting the humans. How come other humans just came in? And like, if you don't really know your kingdoms and haven't like paid close attention to kind of internalize it, you'll be a little confused. It's just not quite so elegant. But I do think, yeah, you can get 8 or 9/10 of the way there.
Right.
Without really like, you don't need to know, you can kind of understand MacGuffin and like big bad evil force. Like you don't need to know, he happened to be an angel that came down.
You don't need to know that Gandalf is an angel, or that Gandalf and the Balrog are basically the same thing.
Right.
Or that Elrond is technically a half-elf.
We talked a little bit in our previous Lord of the Rings episode that it's like not only does everything have a name, everything's got like 3 names. So it depends on like, the elves will have a name for something, and the humans will have a name for it, and the hobbits might have a different name. And it's like Gandalf is also Mithrandir.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they've got all kinds of names. Strider is Aragorn, and he's got one other name, I think, but yeah. Yeah.
So before we get to giving our scores, I wanted to make sure Will had a chance. I know you know a lot about Tolkien and Lord of the Rings, and just like what are a few other like topics that you think are kind of interesting that that someone who knows the movies might want to learn a little bit more about?
Sure. One thing that I find interesting is that Christopher Tolkien, who was J.R.R. Tolkien's youngest son and who was the executor of his estate, does not like the movies, or did not like the movies. He's dead now, but he did not like them because he thought he rendered a somber and sort of introspective story into an action film made for 15 to 25-year-olds. And I can definitely sympathize with his claims on that because in many ways, the Lord of the Rings books are very much about sort of the inevitability of war when you're trying to preserve goodness, whereas it feels a little bit more celebratory and triumphant in the movies. And you get, like, for example, as I mentioned, Boromir's death is off screen in the books, yet it's a major touch point in the movies. So all these sort of big epic moments of people triumphing and stuff like that are less important in the books than the sort of the reverberations and what it means and like in a larger picture, what can we do to prevent the world from sort of declining further? So I just find it interesting that Christopher Tolkien, who was, the target for many of these stories, was not a big fan of the movies because he perceived them to be watered down action flicks. And Brian, I know you've read the books, but so what do you? What's your thoughts on that?
I agree with that. I think a lot of the choices that the movies made were smart. I don't think they would have done as well as they did if we had much more singing and lyrical poetry.
And just a lot more talking. Apparently the original script draft for the council at Rivendell was like 40 minutes long. And they're like, this is just untenable. We have to cut it down. Yeah,
I read that in the documentary. So I want to talk a little bit more about the production because I think it's pretty uniformly excellent. They didn't call her his wife. It's like his partner or something.
I think it was his wife. Peter Jackson's
they're
wife?
Like they're like a couple.
Domestic, yeah.
But I don't know that they're married. But I think her name is like Fran Walsh. I think she wrote the movies. Is that correct? She
was at least the script editor. I don't know if she actually did all the writing, but she was definitely heavily involved in the writing. Okay. And apparently they would do redrafts like every day. They would tweak the script more and more, and they would get new versions out.
Yeah, so I just learned that watching these documentaries, and so that they were basically working together, him directing and her writing, and them constantly having this conversation of, wait, how do we do this? And like it changing deep into even production. Like Aragorn got recast while they were already filming, and Gimli at one point says, eventually I just stopped reading the script drafts because I knew that more would come the next day. So if like I wasn't on camera that day, I would just leave it on the pile.
And the one does not simply walk into Mordor. That whole thing apparently was written the day of, and so Sean Bean had the script like on his leg while he was reading it, and that's why he's like looking down when he's doing it.
That's funny.
Yeah,
but yeah, just really cool result from Jackson, this horror director from New Zealand, and what a cool place to make these movies.
It's like perfect for it.
Yeah, it's this place that is just very kind of alien to the American, European mind. Like, we are not familiar with this place, but it has this variety of biomes to work in.
Yeah, it's so environmentally diverse because you get those big, like, snowy peaks, then also these deep, shrouded forests and, like, everything in between, the more, like, sort of plain tundra areas and the broader plains for Rohan as well. And yet, go ahead.
I haven't read about the production. I didn't really read too much about it this week, but I remember I read an article on it a few years ago, and just like how kind of insane it was. He went to New Line, the company that funded the production. He's like, Peter Jackson, he's known for making these kind of low-budget, gory horror films. Mm-hmm. So like not the person you would think of to helm an epic fantasy trilogy. And he's like, hey, give me $100 million to make in one huge production a trilogy adapting the most famous fantasy property of all time, and that they bought into it, and that its legacy is obviously enormous.
Yeah, I think originally he went to like New Line or something like that, and they said they would do one movie, they wouldn't do a trilogy, and he was like, no, it's got to be a trilogy. So he went to Miramax instead, and they said yeah, I think it was something like that.
Okay, but and I think also at one point there was discussion of like, he was like, well, maybe I could make it into 2 rather than 3, but then it ended up being 3. But the point was like he was kind of untested, and he kind of did like what George Lucas, what James Cameron have done, where like you kind of ascend to this sort of almost godhood, where it's like you can just make whatever project your whim tells you to make at that point. And I don't know if he's quite there anymore. I think he had a couple of like not flops, well maybe flops.
Probably the Hobbit trilogy.
And the Lovely Bones he made after that. And didn't he do a King Kong adaptation?
Yeah, the King
too?
Kong was okay.
So he might not be where he was in terms of like that clout, but like he went from being this, again, scrappy director to like one of the titans.
Yeah, and I think it was a massive, like everybody in the New Zealand film production industry worked on these movies.
Yeah, I believe
like
it.
Everybody did. And so it was a huge thing in New Zealand. It was probably bigger than we might not appreciate normally, like how significant it was for the film industry in New Zealand.
And I feel like still to this day, a lot of the people who are going to New Zealand, that's probably the reason.
I remember reading that. It's a non-trivial amount of like the New Zealand economy is Lord of the Rings tourism.
Yeah, because Hobbiton still exists. So you can go into Bag End.
Yeah, I don't know if you watched the show Flight of the Conchords, but it's a comedy music duo from New Zealand. And part of the show, kind of the joke, is that they're small potatoes. They're not a big deal as a band, but then that kind of, as the story goes along, is extended as a metaphor to New Zealand is not that big a deal as a country.
Mm-hmm.
And like the manager of the band, his day job is he works at the New Zealand consulate in America. And he's like, anybody who passes by, he's trying to like tell them about New Zealand. It's like Lord of the Rings.
One of those guys is actually in the Lord of the Rings movies. The guy without the glasses. He plays an elf. And you see him in the third movie when Arwen has a vision of her son. He's the one who's like, "Where are you going, Lady Arwen?" or something like that. So you get him for 1 second.
We've dragged this out. I think I'm about ready to rate.
Well, there's just one or two more things because it got brought up before, the whole shipping thing between Sam and Frodo.
Yeah. Let's talk
I just wanted to say that I don't really care, but in this case, I tend to kind of push back against shipping Sam and Frodo because I think it undermines a lot of what the sort of thematic core of the Fellowship in general, in that it's like these really close, intimate friendships that you can have with people who you go through these grievous experiences without it being romantic. And so and in general, I consider the entire Fellowship to be pretty positive depictions of masculinity. Like they're like good friends. They're intimate friends. Like Aragorn kisses Boromir's head when he dies, and they're all like holding hands and hugging and stuff like that, in a very sort of a healthy portrayal of intimacy, especially like for men to see. So I tend to push back against the sort of romantic, the shipping of Sam and Frodo, just because I feel like, Sam was specifically inspired by like the errand boys in the trenches. It was not the officers, but Tolkien considered them to be like really admirable because they followed orders and they were like running messages between places, like really dangerous. And so Sam was specifically inspired by those types of helpers and like how they put themselves on the line for the officers and stuff like that. But yeah, in general, shipping is whatever. I don't really like it because I think you cannot have two characters have any kind of positive interaction anymore without people shipping them. So where friendships are gone. But in this particular case especially, I don't like it because I think part of the thrust of their characters was a very intimate platonic friendship that I think is absent in a lot of other fiction.
I completely agree. Like, it actually annoys me if you go to the letterbox for Return of the King, like 7 of the top 10 most liked reviews are like, this movie sure is gay, huh? And like, I've been someone who's come on the pod and talked about a lot of movies, be like, this movie's kind of gay, huh? But like, I feel like in this one, I agree that the point is like, they can be good to each other, like just authentically good and nice and affectionate to each other, not because it's like transactional and I want your power. Like that, think about the bad guys. It's like, okay, Saruman wants to be in power. Sauron wants to be in power. The corrupted people are clinging to their power. And like, that's what you kind of like, every connection is like a means to consolidate power. Compare that to like the good guys, and it's not. It's like, they're literally just looking out for each other, trying to like solve this world problem together in kindness. And like their ability to be kind of soft doing that, and like while still being strong, is like kind of the point. Is, I agree, part of the point.
Yeah, and Tolkien was a straight man but he also had basically a separate life of friendship and kinship with dudes. Like he would hang out with men and he had very strong friendships with men, but he kind of almost separated his romantic life from that. So he definitely valued like male friendship very strongly in his life. And I think that obviously comes off very apparently in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I think that is all well said, and I agree. I just think it's kind of funny a little bit. The interactions, especially towards the end, between Frodo and Sam, mostly just the way that bit is edited in Return of the King with the Rosie Cotton when
If I was gonna marry anyone, it'd be her.
Yeah, Frodo kind of gives him like a look. I don't know. I got to watch the scene again. But you're right. I mean, I agree with everything that was said. I also, unrelated, I want to shout out actor Bernard Hill, who played Theoden.
I love Theoden.
Titanic captain.
And
too.
he's the captain on the Titanic. And so this guy, prominent supporting role in 2 of the 3 movies that won 11 Academy Awards.
Good for him.
He's really good as like the sort of unconfident king, and he's great. He gets a lot of awesome moments in the especially in the 3rd one. But yeah,
and so as I mentioned, I kind of have always been a little bit of a Tolkien skeptic, and like one of my muse scenes for that, or like rants about that, comes from Clerks 2, which we shouted out in I think in our other Tolkien episode where we talked about the animated ones. But one of the Clerks guys has this, it's very funny and it holds up rant where he talks about like those Hobbit movies were boring as hell. It's just a bunch of walking. And I don't agree with him quite as much as I used to, but I think now looking back on that, he really plays up like, oh, it's weird that they're gay. And I'm like, okay, let's grow up a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean, they are walking a lot, but I think it's downplayed by the fact that the setting changes so much. Like they're walking through a forest and then a mine, and then they're riding horses and then another forest, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, mixed bag. I think there is too much walking. If I were to change one thing about the script, well, the simplest would be I would probably cut out the mountain pass scene when they're trying to go over, I think it's called Caradhras. It's the icy mountain.
When they get forced to Moria.
The point of that scene is they try it and it's too hard, and then they go through Moria. It's like, what if we just went to Moria instead? It would save, we wouldn't have to have all the actors out in the snow. It's like we wouldn't have to go have all the helicopters. It's like probably they spent like $10 million on that scene. I don't know.
I guess the devil's advocate would say that scene is there to show that they're being forced into going to Moria, that it's not a path they want to take, and that it's just some kind of weather getting in their way. But you're right. It ultimately it feels a little bit redundant, or it's like something that doesn't really go anywhere. But I guess it does set the tone of Saruman being resistant to them. But yeah. Anyway.
All right. So I'll talk us into rating. So Is It Good is our signature section where we each give the movies a rating on our 8-point goodness scale, ranging from very not good, which is a 1 out of 8, to our masterpiece rating toward a good, which is an 8 out of 8. So we will go Fellowship, Towers, Return, and I will go first. So starting with Fellowship. So the word ambivalent, it means like mixed. It means like not quite sure how you feel. And that's a little bit me. It's like, I'm not quite sure how I feel, because I do think the movies have a problem. And the problem is that it's too much stuff for a movie. So I don't think the movie gets better by making it longer. It does feel rushed, but I'm not sure longer will solve it, because it's still all this stuff happening in one movie, in 3 movies then eventually. I'm also not sure that it gets much better by cutting more stuff, because then you start to lose the richness. I think Brian's probably right that there are like elements you could trim. I'm not sure we needed it's not in this one, but I think each of the movies have things where like you could cut it and you still get the overarching scope of the story. So there's probably some of that you could do. So like 3 hours is long and it's a lot of story, but I don't know. It's a little bit daunting. Sometimes it doesn't feel like a movie. Sometimes it feels like a visual outline of a story. It's like I talk about movies being too adaptation-y. I felt this way about the first Dune movie also. It's like, here's the thing. Here's an event. These are all tied together. These characters are tied together. And it's like, you can almost watch it and you're like, this wasn't designed to be a movie. Like, this doesn't feel like a movie. It just feels like you're explaining something that happens in a different story. And I never fully shake that feeling with Lord of the Rings, but I'll say it's particularly pronounced in Fellowship, where it really feels like we got to hit all the places, the points, get the characters moving, and then we kind of wrap. And then the second and third have a little bit more room to breathe. That said, I very, very much turned a corner on Lord of the Rings overall this week. I understand it much more. I see much more richness in its story and depth in its story, and I'm not quite so daunted by its all of the names and the lore, because I kind of just get it now. It's like I could go and watch it, and I think I would like it even more if I watched it again now. And I'll probably watch it again at some point within a few years. Maybe I'll even try the extended editions. I don't know. So like overarchingly, I did turn a corner. That's the takeaway. I like Lord of the Rings. I'm not the skeptic.
Glad to hear it.
I'm not sure I'm like all in on Tolkien, but I do now like Lord of the Rings. So but takeaway. Boom.
Dan's all about Eragon and Gandorf.
Yeah, that was funny. You said Eragon and Gandorf. Sorry, Aragorn and Gandalf.
So I'm going to give this one, like, it's right on the edge of a 6 and a 7 for me. Like, almost spiritually, I want to, like, praise it because it's, like, a big achievement and a unique thing, and it tells a grand story in a certain way that you just can't diminish and you can't replicate. So I'm going to just give it barely and exceptionally good for me.
All right.
Brian, what about you?
I'm actually going to give Fellowship of the Ring an 8 out of 8. Tour de Good, masterpiece. This is, well, I guess I'll rate the other ones as well when we get to them. But I think this one is very effective in how it table sets. Especially like the first 20 minutes of this movie, I think really, really work well. The prologue sequence, it hits the important stuff and feels epic, but it doesn't bog us down too much. Like, there are ways they could have had this information in there and just taken way longer and been messier. But we get the narration from Cate Blanchett, and we just get quick snippets of the scenes of the battles and the golems there, and it's like, okay, I get this, and then it's smashed to the Hobbit town, and the Shire music and just all the production design of this little Hobbit village and the party. It's really nice, and you feel immersed in the world. And then the setup of this ring. Oh, there's this evil thing that's going to draw evil attention to this idyllic village, and you got to get it out of here. All of that, excellent. Really great. Then it kind of drags. Then it's a little bit more, back and forth, and some repetition of 2 elf villages you're going to relax at. But I think the Khazad-dûm stuff, very cool, and it just shows the scale of what is going to come in 2 and 3, all the orc onslaught, and the build up to the loss of Gandalf, very poignant, very done well. And then he's gone, and it's like, wait, we got to carry on. We don't have our most powerful member. It's something that is ultimately undercut a little bit in the subsequent chapters, but we don't know that yet. Just watching the first one when you're 11 at the movie theater. And I really think this is a great movie.
The one thing I'll append to what I said in agreement with Brian is, I feel like this is the most iconic one. It has the images that I most associate with Lord of the Rings, the moments, the lines that I most associate with Lord of the Rings. There's one thing that I really want to shout out, that it happens 3 times in Fellowship, and I don't think it happens in the rest of them because Gandalf's nature has changed. But Peter Jackson does this kind of silhouette shot of Gandalf either riding a horse or walking with his horse, and you get kind of just the outline, because it's shot in a way that the characters are dark, but just this shape of Gandalf. And that to me is fantasy distilled into a single composition. Will, what about you?
Unsurprisingly, I'm also going to give this one an 8, a Tour de Good. And I think this one probably stands as the best film alone, just from the way it builds, as Brian shouted out, that setup. You get the insane flashback of these giant armies battling, and then you cut to the setup for this like goofy little provincial party in Hobbiton that is like a party I want to go to. It's like these people dancing, there's fireworks, and they're drinking beer at tables and big speeches, and everybody's laughing and having a good time. You get the Nazgul, the ring wraiths, as like this fantastic sort of pursuing force with that one scene where they're like hiding under the roots, and then the guy leans over and there's all like the bugs crawl out and stuff like that. There's so many small elements of the production that really enhance the tension. And then, yeah, you get the start of the epic journey from like Rivendell through Moria. And when you're talking about iconic, for me, the iconic Lord of the Rings shot is when they're coming over the ridge and you get the fellowship theme and you see each individual person coming over the top of the ridge as they're marching onward towards Moria. And it's just all this stuff really is, this one I think has the best, or at least the most complete arc from setup to Gandalf's death to finally Boromir's death at the end. And it just feels a little bit more individual than the other two, I think. And so, yeah, I'm going to give this one a Toward of Good. And if you're going to force me to pick one as which one I think is the best, I would probably pick Fellowship.
On to the Two Towers. I will rate this one. So another takeaway for me is that all three of the movies have things that they do better than the other two, but also have their problems. I think the Fellowship one, I really, the pacing and like the dumping of like, gotta go place to place, here's a name, here's a character, boom, boom, struck me most with the first one. Whereas I feel like the Two Towers has a little bit more room to breathe for stuff to happen. And honestly, I actually felt like this was the one that most functioned well as a movie, where the pace felt most cinematic to me, like it was designed to be a movie. And just the build up to like this epic Helm's Deep, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Showdown. Just really, it's a great payoff. I'm also going to give this one an exceptionally good. I do think it's not quite as iconic, and all of them have like bits of wheel spinning in this one. This one I kind of felt it the least. Like I felt all the characters and ideas that were introduced enriched it a little bit. It does bother me a little bit that Gandalf just comes back so easy, and like that the whole pacing of Gandalf's death and resurrection in the series, I kind of already talked about. I feel like that could have been bumped from 2 and then he's resurrected in 3 or something like that. But yeah, I like this one. Lord, this honestly might have been the one that like most surprised me, because I feel like its reputation is like, it's not the epic conclusion and it's not the terrific setup. It's kind of like the middle one. But honestly, it felt like it worked the best for me out of the 3 movies, just as a pure movie from start to finish. So that's me. Brian, what about you?
So to me, this one has always kind of felt like the middle chapter. I do appreciate, like, the battle is maybe the best battle. It feels like the stakes are highest here, and that this is when the war could go either way. This is like the Gettysburg or the Stalingrad. And so then when the humans ultimately win here, and I feel like there's less of the Deus Ex Machina also in this battle. There's no ghosts yet. And so it feels a little more earned and like a little more miraculous that the humans triumph here. Sure, they have the resurrected Gandalf on their side. And I think the way I feel about Gandalf is just that, okay, so just have him not die. Then if you want him to come back, it's like, oh, he fell down, he was out for a while, now he's back. That's fine. So much in this franchise is like more abstract than I think it needs to be. I mean, maybe I just like being spoon-fed. I like when things are real and concrete and I can look at them. But it's still, for me, this watch through, what I was thinking is parts 2 and 3, they're both great, but there's like a lot of repeated beats and similarities in structure that kind of brought them both down a little bit for me. So I don't know if the answer is a very high 6 or a very low 7. I think I'll edge just into 7. And I do like what Dan said earlier, that like pretty much every character has something to do. We're introduced to some new locations. We've got this great special effects tech to have all the armies. But we still have like real horses. I like the Ents. They're cool. That's a good idea. The fighting trees. even if they do triumph really, really fast. I think they triumph over Wormtongue too fast.
Yeah.
I think he was trying real hard, and then Gandalf just kind of wipes him aside.
Like, boom, tosses him out.
But yeah, I think I'll edge just into 7 for.
And the one thing that I forgot to say that I was going to say about it is this is the one where it really starts to dig into this concept of the ring being a burden and like how it weighs on Frodo. And I think in some ways that like spiritual core of the series carries it through. But Will, what about you?
I'm once again going to give this one an 8, a Tour de Good. If I had to pick, this is probably the weakest of the 3 for me, although it's kind of close between this and the next one, and I'll get into why. But I would say that this one, the middle hour of this movie is probably my least, the part of the trilogy that I'm least interested in. Like the warg battle kind of comes out of nowhere, and then you get Aragorn like going off and doing other stuff. It's like, I will say that the payoff, Helm's Deep, is my favorite sequence in the trilogy, probably, just because it's as far as cinematic or battles on screen go, it's just about perfect in the way it sort of pivots from place to place, and you get the zoom ins on each individual sort of moment, like the wall blowing up and everything. It's so cinematically cast with the rain and the charge of the horses at the end, and everything is it feels dire and it feels epic in the best possible way. But yeah, and I agree that I really think that the Sam and Frodo stuff, as Dan said, it's the heart of the series. And remember, it's the Lord of the Rings. It's about the ring stuff. And I think what a lot of people really remember on their first viewing is all the epic battles and stuff like that. But the sort of moral complexity and the burden that the ring puts on Frodo and Sam is probably thematically more interesting than anything that happens with Aragorn. And you also get Gollum here. And Gollum is he's like a revelation, I think, on screen. He's so good the entire time, and it's hard to imagine that it's like a dude in like an elastic suit leaping around and goofing off, but it just works so well, and he's so unsettling in how he's both childlike and demonic, and it's phenomenal. And so yeah, I'm gonna land on an 8 for this as well. It's a lower 8 than Fellowship, but an 8 nonetheless.
On to the Return of the King. So one thing I didn't say, and I don't know if this is relevant to Return of the King, I would need to think about it, but this movie's got a lot of fake out deaths. It's not just Gandalf, but there's a thing where like Frodo's stabbed. Oh, he's going to die. But then, oh yeah, because this one also has the spider. Like he gets stabbed. Like, oh no, Frodo's dead. Oh wait, no, he's not dead. There's a thing with Aragorn at one point. Like, oh no, he fell off the cliff. He died. Well, no, he's not dead. Oh, Merry and Pippin, they got killed by the orcs. Oh wait, no, they're not dead. It happens like 7 times throughout the series. There's too many fake out deaths. You can do it like once per movie, maybe like once or twice per series would be better. But you said that the middle hour of the Two Towers is the weakest for you. Well, for me, the weakest part was the first like hour-ish of Return of the King, because it's like, first of all, you're like kind of cleaning up from the second one, and it's just not all that interesting. And they're like, oh, well, we got to go to start essentially a repeat arc, but with Gondor instead of Rohan. And it's like, okay. And then there's like this weird stuff. Oh, we're going to go into the ghost tunnel, and now we got to convince the ghosts to fight for us. And hey, we're going to have another epic battle, but it's kind of like a lesser version of Helm's Deep. And I was just like, okay, let's get on to like when they throw the ring in. But I really think it picks up, and like, I honestly, like, I was kind of surprised how emotional I got at the end of it. Like, it really does feel like a grand conclusion to this story. It really builds to it, and it really feels like a payoff. And like, I kind of get why this one appears highest on rankings, because like when this is done, you're like, I just achieved and witnessed something great by observing this movie. Like I experienced the epicness of it, and that is an achievement. And honestly, like it makes you feel like the whole series is bigger because of how well it pays off. It's like I almost want to be like, okay, each of the movies is a 7, but the series as a whole is a masterpiece. It is an 8. And I think that is actually what I'm going to do. I'm going to give Return of the King an exceptionally good. I think the second half is a tour de good, but I think it kind of overall, like there's this weird stuff and slow stuff. And this is one where I kind of feel like, I don't know if I want to watch the extended edition. Like 50 more minutes of this movie or however much it is, I don't know. But I'm going to give this one an exceptionally good as well. But like I do think the movie, the trilogy overall earns its reputation for being one of like cinema's grand achievements. So that's an exceptionally good for me on Return of the King. Brian.
I really like how you phrased that it's like each chapter is 7, but the whole thing is like greater than the sum of its parts. I kind of feel that. When I was 13, Return of the King was my favorite. I went and saw it twice. I like things that have an ending, I guess. The heroes win, right? They get to go home, but they kind of reckon with the sense that something has changed that is never going to be the same, and to the point that some people just have to kind of leave life behind. So it's like tragic, but it's epic, and more of this just great scope. And like the battles really blew me away back in the day. Now it feels like it's kind of retreading from part 2. I can kind of see now that I heard in the documentary, Peter Jackson was like, maybe I would get 2 movies. It's like, I kind of feel that. It's like, we get the setup movie and then the battle movie. And that now is 2 and 3. But I think I will also give it a 7, because that send-off really does feel powerful. And it's almost like we, the viewer, have gone through something that has changed us.
Yeah, and I'm obviously going to land on an 8 for this one, unsurprisingly. And for me, this, like, moments of the Lord of the Rings movies that stand out in my mind, almost all of my favorite individual moments come from this movie. I said my favorite sequence is probably the Helm's Deep sequence, but that is the whole sequence, the whole 45 minutes or whatever that battle is. All of the moments that stand out to me come from Return of the King, whether it be Sam saying, I can't carry it for you, but I can carry you, like this emotional triumph where he picks up Frodo and moves him in, or when the hobbits are bowed to by everybody in Minas Tirith, or the charge of the Rohirrim, that with the wailing violin over top, or you get all these amazing individual moments that this is the one that probably sticks in my memory the most, despite the fact that I've seen it the least. It is very long. Even the theatrical cut is almost 3.5 hours long, and it has an extended epilogue, but I do think the payoff is earned. There's so much has happened, and you really want to linger with these characters and see how they're influenced by what they went through. Like the hobbits were like they feel like farm boys at the beginning, and by the end they're trudging through the bowels of a volcano or the depths of a battlefield, and you get all this phenomenal payoff for the journey that the characters have gone through, and you really feel it. Especially, and this is we talked about like Star Wars before and the comparison, and I said that to me those movies don't have as much depth. I really do not feel like you get the same sense of development and change in the world and in the characters and something like that when you compare it to Lord of the Rings, where you really feel that these characters have gone through hell and high water to get where they are and to destroy the ring and to come back home. And finally you get Sam saying, well, I'm back. And it's very remarkable, and it sticks in your stomach, and it feels it's a revelation when it's finally done. You're like, wow, I just witnessed certainly cinema's most epic trilogy, and my pick for the best of all time, but obviously I'm a little bit biased. So yes, that's an 8 for me, and of course an 8 for the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and broadly.
It did win Best Picture.
So it is, uncontroversially, the best picture.
And we've covered a decent amount of them. We should probably tally it at some point, Brian. But we finally did the dang thing. We finally answered who the hell is Gondor.
Yeah.
I feel like we did it properly. So thank you both for talking through it with me, helping me figure it out, and finally coming to at least a little bit understand and appreciate.
I'm very happy.
J.R.R. Tolkien a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm very happy that you seem to have come around on that, because I was worried that it was going to get heated if you came down too negatively, but I'm glad to hear that you are not an idiot. So I didn't have to explain to you who Aragorn is, who Gondor is.
So Brian, what are we going to be discussing next week?
So I thought with such an epic episode, we needed to carry on into the next stage somehow. I couldn't just end here. So I'm actually making this the backdoor pilot to our next theme month, listeners. Yes, we are now going to be heading into a month that I want to devote to movies with big and small effects. I'm calling this perhaps Max-a-month, Mini-month. We'll see. We'll see what we call it. It may vary from week to week, but that's the idea, is things that we are used to being at a certain scale, typically people, but if it's animals, that's cool too. Something that exists in our day-to-day life at a size we are familiar with, that now in this movie is grown enormous or shrunken very small.
All right.
So we got some of that in Lord of the Rings. We had hobbits and dwarfs and not too many giants. I think the Peter Jackson Hobbit movies had some giants. But
Big spider, though.
yeah, big spider, that's right. We had the tree people. And so I think this is fertile ground. There's a lot of movies that mess with this perspective. And what I want us to start with is a movie from 1967 from Disney called The Gnome Mobile. And if the stars align correctly, we're going to have the hosts of the Buzzed on Movies podcast, Teddy and Matt, join us.
Should be fun. This sounds great. I'm looking forward to Maximini month or whatever we end up calling it. Big Things and Small Things month. And No Mobile, I'm looking forward to watching that.
With regards to titles, the No Mobile is perhaps the most Brian Core title I've ever heard.
And listeners, come find us on thegoodsfilmpodcast.com. We have a Discord. We'd love to hear your thoughts on J.R.R. Tolkien, The Lord of the Rings, our observations, what your thoughts are on this trilogy, and, of course, what movies you want to see us talk about for Max a Month and Min a Month. Although maybe by the time this is edited, we'll have recorded the majority of that month. We'll see. But this has been fun. Come find us. Will, thank you for coming and bringing your expertise and for letting us talk through The Lord of the Rings trilogy by Peter Jackson.
Yeah, it was fun.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. Like I said, I love these movies, and I could have talked another 4 hours about them.
All right. Bye, everybody. This was a big one. Thank you very much. I'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
And listeners, we talked about the Howard Shore score a little bit. So one kind of inside joke in my family is that my wife, Katie, who I've mentioned, of course, many times, she only knows one song on the recorder. So like a recorder that you get in 5th grade or whatever. And whenever she comes across a recorder, she picks it up and she plays, I don't know which theme this is, I can't remember, but one of the things from Lord of the Rings. So I think
the Shire.
It's the Shire. So I have her here with me. I also have my 2 kids. They came downstairs to listen to her play. So she's going to play us out today with her interpretation of Howard Shore's Lord of the Rings score. So whenever you're ready, Katie.